Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's a long way to come here from Australia. And actually, I was supposed to be here in 2020, 4 years ago. But because of COVID, I couldn't come. And John had already invited me. And I made a promise that when I could come, I would. So it's very important for me to be here. And I have something that I want to put out from Australia, just so I have a little bit of home with me. Okay, so thank you. It's been very special being here at this conference. And I know this is the last event, and it's a big conference and people are tired. So I'll try and hopefully keep it interesting. And I couldn't really understand a lot of what got said yesterday and today. And I was thinking, how do I best express my work? And I decided I will just tell you my story and what we have been able to do in Australia. And hopefully that gives people here some ideas as what you can do in Germany and other countries around Europe. And I start with a fire, because I believe that in our lives we have fire moments. And a fire moment is when things start to cook and when things aren't comfortable anymore and when we're ready for change. And events like this can create fire moments inside us. And we know there's something else out there. And when I was getting ready for this, I was thinking about fire moments in my life. And this was when I was at school. And I don't think I'm any different now, but, you know, I probably am. That was a fire moment for me when I was 15, 16. No one was there. It was actually a very difficult time for me. This is another fire moment in my life with my two beautiful children, Jara and Jaden. And I was a single father, and I had two young boys. Another fire moment. No one was there. And then I became a doctor, and I worked for 15 years in emergency medicine. And then I saw fire moments everywhere. And what was very interesting for me when I worked in emergency medicine was how many boys were coming into the hospital, how many teenagers were coming into the hospital, and why they were coming in. And I started to notice some patterns. Does anybody relate? Yes. But look, he's on his own. There's no one there watching. There's no safety equipment. And if he does that and he somehow survives, what's the next thing he's going to do? Go higher and higher. It can only end one way. Eventually they come and meet me. And I saw many things happening with boys, not good things happening. And I saw that often there were disasters. And I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? And I realized that these boys, they want to do the things of men. They want to drive cars. They want to drink alcohol. They want to, we talked about it before, test their warrior spirit. But they're on their own. And they don't actually understand what they're doing. But it's an energy coming from inside. And the community is not there supporting them to turn this energy into something positive, to learn how to manage it. And because I'm a doctor, I'm interested in research. And by the way, I know a lot of people here want to work, or not a lot, but some want to work in schools. If we're going to work in schools, we have to be able to look at some research. Research is not a bad thing. It's just research. But this is the research that came out in Australia, one of the things. And this looks at happiness and well-being. And this is at 12 years of age for a boy, 16, 18, and then it goes along. And what it tells us is somewhere between 14 and 18, something happens. And most of the treatment, most of the work is done here. But it's not the right place to do the work. We have to be doing the work back here. And because of this, and because of what I was seeing in the hospital, I'm like, what's actually going on? And then we looked at what's happening with boys. And some of the big issues, and I think you already know this, so I'll go through quickly, are depression, stress, problems with relationships, body image, school and work problems. And I started looking even wider. And you know, today, if a boy has a problem, he is more likely to go to the internet than he is to come to us. If you have a son and he has a problem, a big problem, imagine him just going to the internet. It's the last place I want him to go. So part of my story is I left being a doctor and I decided to do this work full time. And I've been doing that for 25 years. And I'm very happy that we've managed to get our work into many, many countries and had hundreds of thousands of people around the world going through it. It's a start, but we still have a lot to do. And so what I'm interested in, because I'm 60 years old, I'm in the beginning of becoming an old man. And so my job now is how can I support other people who want to be doing this work? How can we spread the work? How can we understand it more, bring it to Germany, take it into schools, take it into families, take it into communities? And I also realized these problems I showed, it's not just boys. It's men. It's elders. It's all through. There are so many things going on that we could be doing so much better. So we did a lot of work into what does it take for boys and men to thrive? How do you say, wie sagst du thrive in Deutsch? Okay, you understand. It's very important. It's sehr important. Du kannst versteht. You have to understand thrive, to do really well. So how do we do that? It's easy, great to say, oh yeah, we want them to do well, but what do we do to do that? And so we found there are some key things for everyone, boys, men, elders. And the first is have a sense of belonging, like we're creating here. When we have a sense of belonging, it helps just about everything. And one of the big problems is actually isolation. And as I said earlier, if a boy hasn't got somewhere healthy to belong, he will go somewhere unhealthy just to get belonging. And now they have that big trap of their computers. Oh, I can't get friends. I go on my computer. I have 2,000 friends. Oh, I don't feel any power. I go and I just kill people on my computer in the games we play. So we have to look at belonging. If we're going to be safe, if we're going to thrive, we have to be safe. That's logical. This is an important one, to be seen. So every boy is different, and they have to feel safe enough actually to be themselves. Not what they see on social media, but to be themselves. And then when they're being themselves, they need men and older people to see them. And this is something we can definitely do. And the other thing is, if we're going to thrive in our community at any age, we need to have the skills to be able to thrive. And just one or two more pieces of research. There was some very important work that came out of the National University of Singapore. And I mentioned earlier today, what they discovered was that academic results are not the most important thing anymore, because all that information is on your phone. And so they talked about 21st century life skills. If a person is going to be successful and happy, this is what they need. Resilience, because things are going to go wrong. Anybody here never had anything go wrong in their lives? Oh, congratulations. You have a real problem. So, we need to teach them and even learn ourselves that when things go wrong, it's actually a way we can grow. In fact, when we do our programs, we say to the boys, you will all have challenges in your life at times. You don't get to choose them. You don't know when they happen, how long. But what will define your life is not your challenges, but how you deal with your challenges. If you can learn and grow from them, that's the most important thing. If you let your challenges define you and you become a victim, it's going to be a long, hard life. So, resilience, adaptability. The world is changing faster than ever. The people who can adapt are going to do well. Having emotional intelligence. Being able to understand my emotions, other people's emotions, be able to have healthy conversations. I never learned any of that at school. Anybody learn emotional intelligence at school? Yeah, the younger ones maybe, but we didn't get that. Having a vision and a purpose. The people who have a vision and a purpose will do well. Another interesting one that's in there that I haven't written down is curiosity. Being curious. How interesting. To be curious about the world is actually an indicator of future success. So we're willing to look outside of where we are. And I would hope that many of you men are here because you're curious. So thank you. And then I'm also interested in what's happening in the world. What are the global megatrends? Because we have to go out and understand before we can come in and know what to do. And the big one that has changed everybody's life is technology. And we're seeing that, teenage boys, many of them are spending 9 or more hours a day on technology. 9 hours a day. It's incredible. This is my friend Patrick Vincent in Sweden. Anybody know Patrick? Yes, I thought you might, Alexander. So Patrick invited me over a few years ago to do some work, and he runs retreats for boys who are addicted to video gaming and porn. And he is booked out 12 months ahead. And so technology has come more and more into our lives, and it's not going away. Artificial intelligence. We're just starting to understand. They're all saying it's going to change the world, it's going to change the world. But how is it going to change the world? And one of the things they talk about is that up to half the jobs are going to disappear. Half the jobs we know are going to disappear. So if we have children, if we're working with boys, we need to know this. Because you wouldn't want a boy to go through school, to go to university, go to his job on the first day, knock on the door, and they say, sorry, that job doesn't exist anymore. It's going to affect all of us. Now, I'll talk about this a bit more later, but if I look at technology, I consider for the young, it's the modern day drug. If I have a problem, if I'm not happy about life, I can just lose myself in technology. And so many of them are. Put up your hand if you have a child and you are fighting a war between technology and your child, if you're fighting a war with them. Yeah. Grandchild, yeah. The average age in Australia of mobile phone ownership, the average age they get a mobile phone now is 10 years old. Yeah. Well, actually, when you buy a pram, you know what a pram for your baby? There's a slot in it, and they say, what size slot do you want? Do you want for an iPhone, an iPad, so that when you're pushing your baby, it has something to look at. Anyway, so, but it's not going to go away. There's many things that we can talk about with this, but the one thing that I always say, the balance to technology has to be creating human experiences. If all they ever get to do is technology, we're fucked. but human experiences. And what are human experiences? Sharing stories, getting out in nature, we have to be creating those human experiences that are technology free. And we can all do that. And that's also with ourselves and with our partners and with our friends and with our children. So we need to be looking at that. Okay, so many of us are parents and many of us want to be mentors. There was a beautiful question that came over here when we were sitting, and the man said, I have a nephew, doesn't have a father, what can I do? The best thing about that question was that he asked it, because he's thinking about it. And one of the things we talked about up there and in here is that parenting and mentoring teenagers is different from children. How we mentor a 15-year-old or how we parent a 15-year-old has to be different from how we parent a 7-year-old. They're not the same animal. And so much the importance of the father-son relationship. And father, if it's their biological father, that's great. But if it's not, we actually need all of us men to step in. I talk about in my work, we need an umbrella of men, and we're not just looking after our son, we're looking after all of the boys. And so there's a few really big things that have to happen once they become teenagers. And the first is, we can't keep telling them how to live their lives. Does anybody here have a father who, when you go and see them, they still want to tell you how to live your life? And keep your hand up if you like that. They don't want to. And the research shows that most of our sons will be taller than us and stronger than us. And if we keep telling them how to live their lives, they'll either leave, stop talking to us, have a fight with us. It's not going to happen. So what we have to do is you have to create a shift from this, I'm your father, you're my son. This is when they're young. It has to move more to this. I'm still your father, but we are now two men walking together. And I'm happy to share my stories, and if you want some help, I'll help you. And there's going to be a time when I need some help. So we need to be thinking, how do we create that shift? And I'll come back to that in a moment. The other thing that's very, very important for fathers, mentors, teachers, is that when they do something wrong, when they do something that's not okay, this is an Australian boy burning down the house. When they do something wrong, the most important thing is we don't shame them. To shame a boy is the worst thing we can do, because it stops development in a certain direction. I worked with a man, 64 years old. He told me that when he was 14, he went water skiing. We know what water skiing is? And he fell off. And when he got in the boat, his father made fun of him in front of his friends. He shamed him. And this man, who's now 64, is telling me the story that since that day, he will never try anything new in front of other people because he has such a fear of that shame feeling coming up again. And as he's telling the story, he's crying 50 years later. And what we talk, and I tell you these things because your boys are going to do things that are not good. It's going to happen. And that's not okay what they've done, but what we talk about is we have to separate the person from the behaviour. It's like, I love you, but burning down the house is not okay. Let's talk about it. Because we also know that often when a boy acts out, when a boy at school or anywhere does something that's bad, there's actually something else going on. So we have to find what else is going on. So it's like, hey, I don't support the behaviour, but I love you, so how can I help you? Very, very important. Very important. And I'll tell you a quick story. True story. My son, when he was 17 years old, we were living together, he heard about a party on his phone. That's how they hear about parties. And someone he didn't know, so he goes over there to the party and he manages to get in, and it's a big party in a big house, and he's dancing and he meets a girl and they're having a nice time, and after a while she says, let's go and have a look, and they go up the stairs and they go into a room, and it's a bedroom, and he sits down on the bed with this girl, they've turned off the light, and they're just about to kiss, and the door comes open, the light comes on, and in walks the mother from the party, and she goes crazy, and my son gets kicked out of the party. The next day, he starts getting texts on his phone, we are going to get you. So all of a sudden, it's a problem. And I'm happy that he came and spoke to me. I said, okay, let's talk about this. I love you, I'll support you. You went to a party you weren't invited to. That's not okay. I remember doing that when I was young. We can leave that one. You went upstairs in a house that you didn't know into someone else's bedroom. We don't do that. We're going to have to deal with that somehow. But first, we have to get you out of trouble. So we talked about it, and we decided that a good idea would be to go over and see the family. So we found the phone number, and I rang up, and the mother answers, and I go, hello, this is Dr. Rubinstein speaking. I'm like, and I talked to her, and she knows what I'm talking about. I said, can we come over? She said, yes. So we go over there, and we sat with the mother and the father. She told an incredible story. She said it was a celebration for her son. Something good had happened. They wanted to have this party. She said it was the worst night of her life. Kids coming from everywhere, vomiting on the front grass, broken glass. The police came 3 times. She got a migraine. She goes up to her bedroom, opens the door. There's my son. Yeah, and she lost it in front of her friends. So very good for my son to hear that. Very good. He apologized. And then he went and spoke to the boy, he apologized, they shook hands, and the boy said thank you, and they decided they'd leave it at that. Now, I have not been the perfect father. I have lots of problems, all of that, but that was one I did well. And one thing I would recommend to all of you men is that with your son, take him aside in a quiet moment and say, if you're ever really in trouble, know that you can come to me. And maybe even make a code word like code red or pink pineapple or whatever. And if they tell you that or they text you that, the deal is you go and help them no matter what. I have a stepdaughter. I have an agreement with her. If she's in trouble, she can send me a text, and instead of putting the X at the end, she puts it at the beginning. And if that happens, doesn't matter what time it is, 4 o'clock in the morning, where it is, the deal is I will go and get her. Doesn't matter if there's drugs, alcohol, sex, I will go and get her. It's a very good thing to say to them. So it's just a recommendation. And in Australia, one of the things that we find, and we've already heard about it here, is a lot of parents, we love our children, but we don't get a lot of education in parenting. And so we actually put together from our work some of the things that we have found are really helpful with parenting. And we put together just 7 things. And I'm going to give you a QR code in a moment. I'll show you. We'll come to a QR code so you can download this. But things like sharing stories with your child about what you did when you were their age. And not only where you were successful, but also where you got in trouble. They need to hear that. This spending regular one-on-one time with your child, doing something you both enjoy without the phone and without alcohol. And there's already been a big discussion about this. We can't spend our whole time with our children. We can't throw away our mobile phones. But they need regularly, and regular might be once a day, once a week, once a month, they need to know in that time they are the most important person. There's no phone, it's just you and them. When you give that to them, it's like gold. It's like watering a plant. And, you know, my sons are 30 and 32 now, and we still have a thing where once a year we go away and we do something together. Just us. And they even ring me up and they say, Daddy, that's when they call me Daddy, we haven't done our thing yet this year. So one-on-one time. When there's a problem, ask them what they want to do first before we just tell them what to do. Connecting privileges and responsibilities. Acknowledging their gifts and talents. Teaching skills of reflection, it's written on here. And also when I talked about when discipline is required, that we separate the person from the behaviour. Now, you might already do all these. You might not like these, that's fine. But for people who are interested, on the back of the sheet, there's each of these things, and you just give yourself a mark out of 10, and then you join up the dots, and you might find that somewhere it goes in, and it's somewhere you might want to think about. So there's a QR code. If you want to download that, we've found that to be really useful. The other big thing, and it's already been spoken here, but it's so important, I'm happy to say it again, is this whole thing with the lack of elders. And elders don't have to be 80 years old. Elders can be any age. But we need to be bringing elders in. And I loved, we talk about the same thing, to introduce your sons to your friends. But not only introduce your sons to your friends, when your sons bring home their friends, talk to their friends. Ask them what they like doing. You might find that there's a period of time when they're teenagers that you can have a better conversation with your son's friend than you can with your son. And so the more we can do that, it's about creating the community. Now, we also talk to mothers. I'm not going to go on a lot about this, but I just need to let you know that this is what I say to mothers. When the boys become teenagers, you have to give them some space. You have to. And there's a word in English, and it might just be coincidence. I don't know if you know this word, smother. Yes. And, I tell the mothers, we have to give them space. I had a boy come to me one time who I knew since he was a little child. I'd stitched him up when he was a kid. He's 14 years old. His mother brings him to me. She sits him down. She goes, Dr. Rubinstein, can you talk to my son? He's being really difficult. And the boy's sitting there. He's got a hoodie. He's got his hood on, and Mum's going on. And then she looks at her boy and she goes, oh, you got something in your face. And she licks her fingers. And you can see the boy. He's like this. And eventually I say to Mum, thank you. Maybe I just have a chat with the boy for a while. And Mum goes out. He sits up. He pulls his thing back. He goes, Dr. Rubinstein, you have to help me. And then he says, she irons my underpants. So, but we have to do this in a loving way, because the mothers have a big fear that if their boys move, they will lose them. And so it brings a lot of grief and a lot of control issues. So what we say is it's about changing the relationship. And it's about changing it from mothering when we know everything that's happening. And I say to the mothers, when your son is a teenager, you won't know everything he does. You don't want to know everything that he does. And it's to give them space, but also to be available. Okay, so there's another really important thing that boys and men need to thrive. And that is, we need to keep changing and evolving. We can't stay at the same place. It doesn't work. And I look at it that life is like a staircase. And we start off as a boy, even a baby, and then become a young man. And when I'm a young man for a while, I'm happy I'm a young man. But then maybe I want to go out in the world and become a leader, a father, all these other things. And then eventually I move and I become an elder. And it's about moving. So we get to one step, and for a while that's good. But then some agitation comes in. And I know there's another place. And by the way, the most agitated of all are the teenage boys. And we didn't even used to have the word teenagers until about 60 years ago. They've put this new stage in between boy and man. And so the teenagers are in there and they want to do the things of adults, but they get treated like children. And so they're very agitated. But times of agitation will also happen in our lives. Like, is there anybody here now who in life is agitated? Anyone? Uncomfortable, you know that you're not happy with your work or something in your relationship or your health, there's... Yeah, and it's maybe about a third to a half, and that's correct. Das ist korrekt. We're not supposed to always be agitated because, I'm a bit agitated at the moment because in my work, I know that I need to be working differently. I can't be working as hard as I was when I was 50 or 40. I know my work needs to change where I still work, but only doing the things that only I can do. I need more time. I need to be mentoring. And so I'm trying to work out how to create that shift. Yeah? And so at various times, the agitation will come up. And when we feel agitated, we know that's time for a change. But how do we do it? And this is where my work around rites of passage comes in. And rites of passage have been done by traditional and indigenous communities for thousands of years. Does anybody not know the words rites of passage? Okay, how do we say rites of passage in German? Übergangsritual. That's it? Great. In German. And they made rites of passage for boys to become young men. But not just for boys to become young men. For marriage, it's a rite of passage. For becoming an elder is a rite of passage. When we die, a funeral is a rite of passage. It's all a way of moving you from one stage to the next. But the one they put the most effort into, and the one that I'm interested in all of them for men, but the one I'm most interested in, the one they put the most energy into, was the boys becoming young men. This is a Maasai warrior boy. When he's 13, 14, he would have to go out into the desert or the forest. They would give him a spear and he has to kill a lion. Imagine that. 13 years old with a spear, a 400 kilogram lion's trying to come and eat you and you have to kill it. But that's what they did. In Brazil, the satere mawe, they used to make these gloves and they would put bull ants with a very bad bite in them, and the boys had to put their hands in there and then dance around in front of the whole community. And the poison would last 24 hours. In Vanuatu, they made big towers out of bamboo, and the boys would climb up, put a vine around their ankle and jump down towards the ground. And we say, this is crazy. We couldn't do this. But what did I see in emergency when I was working as a doctor? They don't kill a lion, they go and they get out, they go in a fight. They don't put their hands in gloves, but they do other things. They crash their cars. They don't jump off a tower, they jump off a balcony or out of a tree or something. So I really believe every single boy, all of your sons, all the boys you know, they are all going to go through a rite of passage. The question is, are we going to let them do their own and just hope that it has the right effect and that they survive? Or are we going to create healthy rites of passage for them as men? Can we do that? And I know that we can because that's what we do. And the first question is, why would we do it? And when I studied the Indigenous communities, what I found is that the first reason they did it was to create a shift from boy to man. And I wrote a model about the difference between a boy, let's say 6 to 10 years of age. How does a boy think? So a boy, he thinks he's the center of the universe. It's all about me. Look at me, look at me. Look at me when I eat my food. Look at me when I'm on the toilet. Just look at me. And if he doesn't get attention when he behaves well, he'll behave badly so he gets attention. He wants power, as much as you can give him. A boy takes no responsibility for his actions. It's always someone else's fault. A boy is ruled by his emotions. If he doesn't get what he wants, he has a temper tantrum. And a boy wants a mother to do everything for him. Now, if this room was full of women, and we asked those women if they know any men who still think they're the center of the universe and want power and don't take responsibility and are ruled by their emotions and want a mother, I know what they would say. And if we don't create the rite of passage, imagine if this boy then becomes the president or prime minister of a big country that has bombs and guns and says, I don't like you, so I'm going to come and I'm going to start killing you. It's what happens. And then what's a man? Is a man supposed to be tough? Is a man supposed to be vulnerable? Is a man, what is a man? So the model that we work with, and you don't have to agree with it all, is that a man, I understand I'm part of the universe. And if I have power, it means I can do more good in my community. A man, accountable. That means if something goes wrong that I've done, I actually have to do something about it. I have to admit it. I have to do something about it. A man, I have to be able to handle my emotions. I am allowed to be angry. I'm allowed to be upset. I'm allowed to be disappointed. But I'm not allowed to punch someone or kick them or abuse them. That's the difference. And a man, I'm not looking for a mother, I'm looking for relationships. And then, whether I'm strong or vulnerable, whatever, that depends the sort of man I am. But we use these principles. And this model that I wrote 25 years ago has been probably the most important thing I've done because for a lot of us, it gives us a point. And I know I can be in boy and I can be in man. I can. Don't know about you, but I can. But the difference is, because I'm a man, I know when I'm being in boy. And so I have choice. And what I'm trying to do is spend more time in man and less time in boy. And to know when it's okay to be in boy and when I need to be in man. And then I actually extended this model to elder because I'm interested in that area now. And elder is as different from man as man is from boy. And I'm still working on this. But an elder, it's more about mentoring the young. It's about letting go of power. Give it to the next ones. It's about having the wisdom and courage to really say what I believe, no matter what other people will think of me. And it's about love. Hopefully as elders, we can be more in the place of love and understanding and compassion. Okay, so. All right, another reason, so they believed it's important to keep their community moving through these stages. We want boys to be boys, but then when they're men, we want them to be men, and then when they're elders, we want them to be elders. We don't want men behaving like boys, and we also don't want elders competing with the men and holding them down because they have their own unhealthy needs. Another reason why they created rites of passage is this is a time when we can teach key life skills, those ones I talked about earlier. So when we take boys out into the bush and do our programs, this is a time we can teach them about resilience and adaptability and have them having healthier conversations. We can do that. It's the perfect time to do that. And the other really beautiful thing about rites of passage is they build strong communities. Anybody who's been involved in rites of passage or retreats, when you do it well, that is actually what creates community. And if you have a community and you bring the children through the rite of passage, your community grows and it actually gives energy to the whole community. So any good rite of passage, if you go to a wedding, that builds community. I went to a funeral recently, and even though someone had died, I saw people I hadn't seen for 20 years. And we're like, oh, let's catch up again. And, these are community events. All right, so if we believe it would be good to create these shifts from boy to man and to elder, to have these skills that we talk about and to build strong communities, how do we do that? How do we actually do it? And there was a man, European man, from Belgium, and about 150 years ago, he travelled all around to Australia, Papua New Guinea, New Zealand, Africa, and he was the first person. He saw that all of these communities were creating rites of passage, and they were doing it at all ages, and they do it in the same way. And he saw that the first thing they would do is whoever was going through the rite of passage, they would take them away from their normal environment. You can't do it at home. You can't do it in the school. So they would take them away into a container. And then they would put them through a transformation. And then they would bring them back into the community and they would be in a different place. And for those who came to my workshop, we did some of the elements yesterday. So he recognized you have to separate people, do a transformation, and then bring them back at a different level. My work has been, what happens in that transformation place? How do you create a transformation? Because what we're actually looking for, this is a bit complex, but it's very important. If I'm going to shift my beliefs, something has to happen, because most of the time our beliefs are fixed. Yeah? Our beliefs are fixed and it determines everything that we do. So we have to create a new space. We have to create what's called neuroplasticity. How do we say neuroplasticity in German? There you go. One more time. Neuroplasticity. Yes. So when you go into this place, if you're in the container, no phones, no watches, you can create this neuroplasticity. And how do we do that? How do we do these things? The first thing is we share stories. When we share vulnerable stories, we open something up. When we have elders sharing stories with the young, we open something up and the elders can pass their wisdom and knowledge on to the young. When we share stories with our own people, we build community. So stories are always in a rite of passage. But at different parts of the staircase, it will be different. So the young, they need to hear the stories of the elders. That's how they learn. The elders, they need to get their stories out. They need someone to listen to them. It's a perfect exchange, but stories are always involved. There's always a challenge or something difficult in a rite of passage. We see with the young ones, they need something very physical. That's why they had to go and kill a lion, jump off a tower. When we get older, the challenge changes. My challenges now are much more psychological, emotional, spiritual, but it's still a challenge, letting go. We create a vision for the future. How do we want to be on this next stage of our lives? And when we get the young and we get them creating a vision for their future, it's a very special thing. And then the last element that is always in a rite of passage We call it recognitions of gifts, genius, and spirit. And what I mean by that, every one of your children and every one of you is different. And every one of your children and every one of you, you all have your own unique gifts and talents, your own genius, and your own spirit. And the role of the community is to help the young ones find their gifts and talents, their genius and their spirit. Yeah? To help them find who they are. And then the role of the individual is to give their gifts and talents to the community. So often we ask the question, what's more important, community or the individual? And it's not one or the other. If the community brings the gifts out of the children, and then when they're adults, they can give their gifts to the community, they both do best. And we can do these things. We can do it with our children. We can do it with ourselves. We can create places where we share our stories, create challenges, make a vision for who we want to be, and actually recognise our gifts and our genius and what we have to offer to the community and what we really want to be doing with our lives. Now, this last one is so important, we're going to do a little exercise. And I don't think this has ever been done in Europe before like this. So this will be the first time. What we do, we call an honouring. It's when we honour the other person and we name a gift and talent that we see and where we've seen it. Where's John? Is John Agner here? Where's he gone? Where is he? John, I need you out here. Beautiful. Up here even. So, stop. That's good. Perfect. Let's say I wanted to honour John about something. This is what I could do. I come up, I put my hand up. Now John's not allowed to say anything and he's not allowed to run away. So John, I'm very happy to have this opportunity to honour you, and I would like to honour you for your ongoing commitment to creating this. Look at what you've done here. Have a look. And what you continue to do, and how beautifully you do it, and how you've built a whole team who are now behind you doing it and allowing you to move up. And you do it with grace, and you do it with humility, but you're also strong when you need to be. And it's an absolute gift that you have to be able to do this. And I have a gift for you. This is not part of the normal honouring, but I would like to give you this kangaroo skin. And what I would like, because I can't come here every year, if we can maybe bring this to some of the future MANN signs so we can have a piece of Australia here in the space. And yeah, I just want to thank you, and obviously for being a beautiful friend. So thank you, John. Okay, so this is what we're going to do, whether you're upstairs or downstairs. There are men here that you know. There are men here that some of you have known for many years. Some of you just met in the last 2 days. But I want you to try and find 2 or 3 men. So we're going to have to stand up. We'll be right. Don't worry about the chairs. And you come up to them. And if I come up to you and I put my hand up, then I can just say one thing to you, that one thing, I was a bit long with John, one thing that I see and I admire about you, and then I leave. You don't honour me back. Verstehst du? It's not an exchange. I honour you, so you honour me. It's not how it works. It's a gift. It's one way. So we have about 7 minutes. When we hear the bell, I need you to sit down again. But see if you can find 3 men and honour them. Let's go. Okay. So, maybe you did not get to speak to everyone you wanted to speak to. That's okay. You can do it later. You can do it forever. So for the rest of the time that we're here, if there's someone that you want to say something to, just come up to them and say it to them. We actually want to bring this into the culture, that it becomes normal. And I'll tell you, when you have a boy, when you honour a boy, that changes his life. This last photo, we do a ceremony on our camp. We have fathers and sons. Every day we sit in a circle, man, boy, man, boy, man, boy. The fathers share their stories. They talk about when they were boys. They talk about their own fathers. Often not very good stories, but some good ones. They talk about successes and failures. They talk about sex and relationships. And the boys just listen. And we do a big challenge for the boys. We put them out in the bush for a whole night. No food, nothing, just the boys and the snakes and the spiders and the scorpions and everything else that's in Australia. Very good. And then we get the boys making a vision, and the fathers and the boys and fathers make a vision together, how they want their relationship to be in 10 years' time. And then on the last day, one at a time, the boys come and stand there, and their father comes up, and in front of everyone, he honours his son. He tells him what he loves about him, what he's proud of, what he admires about him. And one or two other people, one of the facilitators, one of the other men does it. And you see these boys, they grow. It can change their lives. We need to bring this into our community again. We need to make honouring a normal thing. And the impact when we do this work, we build strong communities. It builds the communities. We create a healthy culture. We teach 21st century life skills. And we create healthy ways to grow and evolve rather than them having them to create their own. And we do it by doing human experiences. What could be more human than sharing stories, being in nature, telling someone what you love about them, creating a vision? And I believe if we do this work, that we can change this graph. And that as we get older, we can be happier and more alive. So that's what this work is about. And I really hope that it's going to come here to Germany more and more. You're the men to do it. I hope it's going to get into schools. And what I always say at the end of my work is please take care. And please take risk. Aho.